The Girl Between Two Worlds by Scarlett Eva Williams. Chapter 7, Suzdal. Life in Suzdal was completely different. After that terrible night in Moscow, my mother could not recover for a long time. What I later learned to call post-traumatic stress had drained all her strength. She slept often, during the day and in the evening, as if trying to hide from the pain that lived inside her. And I grew up almost on my own. I spent nearly all my time outside. In summer, I raced through the streets on my bicycle wearing only shorts, a colorful shirt, and an American baseball cap turned backwards. A small neighbor's dog always ran behind me, barking loudly as if it were part of the game. I learned to ride the bicycle by myself. Soon, I became friends with 3 neighborhood boys, brothers named Yashka, Pashka, and Sashka. Yashka was about my age, while the other 2 were younger. We climbed trees together, ran through the forest, and invented endless games. Their house stood at the edge of the forest, next to the home of a priest. Their mother, also a small, round woman with red hair and a wide, kind smile, followed the boys everywhere. Sometimes their grandmother watched us too. I was almost always with them, and with them I felt safe. Sometimes the boy's mother walked me home, sometimes I ran home myself, breathless from running. My face was always red and hot because I rushed through the streets like a little whirlwind. I was a very lively child. I was always running, laughing, arguing, and talking back to adults. I had none of what Russians call people-pleasing. Once my mother's monk friend said, "There is not a single drop of people-pleasing in this girl." I argued with everyone, even adults. I argued with my mother too, and almost always did things my own way. On a hot summer day, I might put on rubber boots, a hat, and some strange old vest like a scarecrow. And on a cool day, I might run outside wearing only a shirt, shorts, and sandals. It was impossible to reason with me. I especially hated when my mother tried to comb my hair and braid it. I struggled, resisted, and ran away. My face was always flushed from running, and my eyes were mischievous. My mother later said that I almost never walked calmly. It seemed I was always running. Sometimes she laughed and called me Pippi Longstocking, and she was right. Even in church, I could not stand still. While the adults prayed, I ran around the church. One day, an elder sent for my mother and said, "She stands like a mommy while the child runs through the whole church. She must hold the girl." But it was almost impossible to hold me. We often played near the church, running around it, jumping into piles of construction sand, hiding behind old walls. One day something happened that my mother later called a miracle. A terrible storm began. Thunder roared and lightning split the sky. Suddenly, one bolt of lightning struck the bell tower. There was a terrible crash. Stones began falling. Huge pieces of stone broke loose and crashed to the ground. And at that very moment, I was running nearby. One enormous fragment fell right beside me. It crashed to the ground and only slightly scraped my arm. It left just a small scratch. But if I had been standing only a few centimeters closer, the stone could have killed me. I was terrified. I began to cry and ran into the church. My mother was inside the church at that moment and did not know what was happening outside. She only heard the terrible crash of falling stones and my crying. She was very frightened. My mother took me to a priest. The priest covered me with his towel and read prayers over me for a long time until I calmed down. But despite my restlessness, something else surprising happened in church. I knew almost all the prayers by heart. Even though I was constantly running and playing, somehow I had memorized the entire liturgy. At home, I often arranged my own church service. Chapter 8. A Strange Child. My mother often said that I was an unusual child. I could run, play, and laugh for hours as if nothing else existed in the world. I was noisy, mischievous, and stubborn, but sometimes I suddenly stopped and said things that surprised the adults. These moments were rare, but they amazed everyone. Once a young woman from Moscow stayed with us. A terrible fire had happened in her apartment building and 4 people had died. Later, her mother was sent to prison for a year. The young woman cried constantly. She believed she was guilty and that her mother was suffering because of her. She could not calm down. My mother said that I was running through the house as usual that day, rushing from room to room, playing and singing something. Then suddenly I stopped next to the woman. I looked at her and said, very seriously, almost like an adult, "Your mother will come out of prison, and my father does not believe in Christ." I said it with such certainty that something strange happened. The woman stopped crying immediately. It was as if she suddenly woke up. She wiped away her tears and even began to smile. After that, she never cried again. My mother was very surprised. My father was Iranian and Muslim. At that time, my mother was so devoted to orthodoxy that she believed other religions were wrong. I often heard adults talking about this, and suddenly I had said something like that. There was another moment my mother remembered with surprise. When my father went to Iran and did not return for a long time, my mother and my older sister Nina began discussing him. At first calmly, then more and more harshly. They remembered all his mistakes and faults as if they were judging him. The conversation lasted a long time. I was running around the house as usual. Suddenly I stopped and said with tears in my voice, "Why are you talking like that? Maybe he is in trouble. Maybe he is in the hospital. Maybe he had an accident. Maybe he is suffering right now because he cannot come. Maybe he is calling me, Esther, Esther, where are you, my little beloved daughter? How much I miss you." My mother later said that she and Nina froze in place. They simply looked at me and could not say anything. But that was not the only thing that surprised my mother. She often said that God somehow protected me in childhood. There was the moment near the bell tower when the stone almost killed me but left only a small scratch. But there were other incidents. Once we visited my mother's friend at her country house. It was a 2-story house. I was playing on the second floor. Suddenly I slipped and began to fall down. But below me stood a large Doberman. Something incredible happened. The dog did not jump aside like most animals would. Instead, it moved directly beneath me and offered its back. I fell onto the dog. It softened the impact. My mother said it looked as if someone had commanded the dog to do exactly that, as if someone invisible protected me. Another time, we were staying at a rented country house. My mother was downstairs packing things before leaving. I was upstairs near a vertical ladder and a hatch. Suddenly, I slipped. According to the laws of physics, I should have fallen straight down. But something strange happened. I flew sideways, as if someone had changed the direction of my fall, and I landed directly on my mother's back. Later, my mother looked at the hatch for a long time and could not understand how it had happened. If I had fallen straight down, I could have been seriously injured, but again the fall was softened. My mother later said that perhaps angels had been involved. She believed God had protected me somehow. Sometimes she even said that I had seen angels. Once we visited Optina Monastery as pilgrims and stayed in a small house near the monastery. After one service, we came out of the church. The sky was clear and the sun was shining brightly. My mother looked up and said, "The Holy Trinity is there." And suddenly I replied, "I see the Holy Trinity too, but the Mother of God shines brighter than all of them." My mother looked at me in surprise. Another time I told her that during communion I saw angels. They stood next to the priest, I said, and helped give communion. I said they had white stockings and small golden bells on their feet. Sometimes my mother remembered another story. I told her that once I saw the Mother of God in church. She stood near the candle stand, I said, and gave bread to people. Despite all this, I remained an ordinary child, noisy, stubborn, and mischievous. I rarely took blessings from priests, but strangely I always took blessings from the abbot of a neighboring monastery. I approached him, kissed his hand, and calmly received his blessing. Once my mother brought me to another priest and said, "Take a blessing." I looked at him and said, "Catch me," and I ran away. The priest unexpectedly ran after me. I squealed with laughter while he chased me across the courtyard. Eventually he caught me. He was a young and handsome priest who loved sports. Later he married and had children, but at that time he was still a monk and often helped our family. In those years we lived very poorly. Sometimes my mother left with Father Ioniki and left me the keys. But the same thing always happened. I locked the door from inside and fell asleep. When my mother returned, they knocked on the door for a long time, but I slept so deeply that I heard nothing. Eventually they had to place a ladder against the house. Father Ioniki climbed through the small window and opened the door from inside. This happened many times. Finally, my mother decided not to leave me the keys anymore. It was shortly before our life changed again, because soon something happened. a real temptation. It frightened my mother very much, but I will tell that story in the next chapter.